Happy Saturday, my fantasy fanatics. It's time to bust out that pen and pad one more time for the top 5 left wingers in the fantasy game today. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Saturday, my hockey degenerates. Welcome back inside the lab to a Saturday special of your daily 30-minute source for hockey news, betting breakdowns, and all of the fantasy takes to take your team to the top. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. We see you, we appreciate you, and we couldn't be doing the pod without y'all. I'm joined, as always, by my distinguished co-host, Mr. Steele Rodin. Mr. Rodin, on today's episode, we got the top 5 left wingers in the game. These players are studs. They're beasts. If you can get them on your squad, you're looking pretty. And if you could get a piece of our 10 through 6 players as well somehow, your squad is looking pretty. I want to talk about it. We got bets for tonight. However, I do want to throw it over to you. We didn't discuss this. But what is going on with Stuart Skinner and the Edmonton Oilers? Just very quickly, I need your personal take on this because Stuart Skinner is starting to give me heart palpitations. One week we say his fantasy value is cooked. We might even stay away from him in the 0G strategy. Now he's throwing out shutties. I don't know what your take is on this, but I just seriously need to know, are these Edmonton Oilers for real?
I have no idea, and I'm honestly confused at this point as well. I think Evan Bouchard and him are colluding at this point because Evan Bouchard is the exact same player. You never know what he's going to bring on a nightly basis. Is he going to be a liability in the defensive zone? Is he going to be a juggernaut in the offensive zone? That's what Stuart Skinner's doing us right now. Hasn't had a save percentage above, I believe, 845 or 850, and if he has, it's a shutout. So there's no in between for this guy right now. It's very complicated and complex. And
exactly.
Stuart Skinner is just making my head spin around in circles for the last.
Didn't mean to rattle you off the top. I just genuinely needed your take on that because this is some wild stuff here.
It is wild. And look, this is a great Western Conference Finals. They've seen each other in the past 2 to 3 years. The Stars have obviously been in the Western Conference Finals the last 3 seasons. And again, this is just this is deja vu for them. So going back to Edmonton, tied 1 apiece. Stuart Skinner gets the shutout, 3-0 win in game 2. Some of their depth scoring, Connor Brown popped off as well. So people are starting to contribute right now. But Stuart Skinner, there's no telling what he can do on a nightly basis when he's between the pipes.
Didn't mean to throw you a curveball, pal. I just meant to mention it before we jumped on. And genuinely, when I saw the play from the Edmonton Oilers on Friday night, it's just, like you said, what a treat of a series we have on hand. And if Stuart Skinner is going to start throwing shutties out there like that, this is going to be very interesting. And we knew this one was going 7 games anyway. However, let's keep it tight. I apologize about that, but genuinely, I needed to know what you thought. Jake Guentzel for me at number 5. This is one of those players that when everyone saw him leave Pittsburgh, is his value going to go down because he's not attached to Sid's hip? We've seen when he went to Carolina, he's produced. He's in Tampa Bay playing with Kucherov and Braden Point. This is a player that you cannot overlook for that reason and because he brings 80-plus point potential every single season, and he's a stud on the power play as well.
Yeah, I have him at number 4, but I'll talk about him now. I have him a little bit higher on the list, but again, splitting hairs here. And for me, again, from what we saw with his time in Pittsburgh with Sidney Crosby, what we saw with his time in Carolina with Sebastian Aho, now seeing his first year done with Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, this guy is a 40-plus goal scorer. This guy's been a consistent 80-plus point player as well for the last 4 seasons. At least on pace for that for a few seasons where he was injured and dealt with some injuries. But he's a 40-goal scorer. He's a guy who just lives on the power play as well. 17 power play goals this last year. He does it on even strength as well. He had 23 even strength goals, both power play and even strength assists as well. Over 200 shots on a consistent basis. The blocks, the hits, that's just cherry on top. Those are just bonus points for fantasy value of this, of the player of this caliber. And I think this situation in Tampa, regardless of the aging core, I guess you can say, of Victor
Sure.
Hedman, Andrei Vasilevsky, Nikita Kucherov as well. They're not slowing down. Kucherov still had a 100-point season as well. His playmaking ability puts him at the top of any list in fantasy hockey categories. So that's why I have Jake Guentzel at number 4 on my list, a little bit higher than you, but that's okay. I have Artemi Panarin at number 5. I believe you had him. Where did you have Panarin at? You had him 6, 7?
Let me bust this list out here, Steele. It's a little bit of a mess as usual for your boy. I had him at 8. Actually, that's a lie. I did have him at 7. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought you did a last minute through. So I have Panarin at number 5 for me. And we all know what transpired for the New York Rangers over the course of the season, the Jacob Trouba trade, the Capo Caco trade, obviously letting Peter Laviolette go, firing him. I still have a lot of faith in this club, and I know they also have an aging core as well with Mika Zibanejad, Vincent Trocheck, Artemi Panarin, they bring in JT Miller as well. I just like this team a lot. I'm not saying they're going to be the top in the Metropolitan. I'm not even going to guarantee they're top 3 in the Metropolitan. But when I look at Artemi Panarin, regardless of how the season finished for the New York Rangers, he's still a perennial 90-point player at the age of 33, 34 years old. 89 points in 80 games this year, had 120 the year prior to that, 92, 96, 95. He is a consistent 90-point player, and unproven otherwise, I'm not losing faith in this guy regardless of how the team overall does in the standings in the Metropolitan Division. I know the New York Rangers power play was really bad throughout the season as well. They had a season power play of 17.62 on the man advantage. That is 5th worst in the National Hockey League, only better than Boston, Philadelphia, New York Islanders, and the Anaheim Ducks. I expect that to be a lot better this season. They still have one of the best, and I know maybe in your case, the best goaltender in Igor Shesterkin. Adam Fox, regardless of how I feel with his fantasy value, he's a stud on the blue line defensively. And we'll talk about that later when we do our team in-team depth throughout the offseason. But Artemi Panarin, again, 30-plus goal scorer, the playmaking ability, he can easily hit 70 assists, which he did the year prior to that. He's done twice throughout his career. Again, once the power play gets going, which I expect it to as well, keep in mind, they have Mike Sullivan behind the bench now.
Thank you. I was just about to say that.
That, like, Peter Laviolette clearly tuned out. Peter Laviolette clearly tuned out the last 2 to 3 months of the season. It was a complete debacle, a complete failure up to top to bottom. Mike Sullivan is not that guy. He is the guy to come in and really change this culture that almost switched on them on a dime at the beginning of the season. So I like bringing in a Stanley Cup champion coach in Mike Sullivan. I like the fact that you're going to get a full year now of JT Miller with the New York Rangers. You know how I feel about him. And I still have faith in guys like Artemi Panarin, Vincent Trocheck, who I think is going to have a bounce back season. Even a guy like Mika Zibanejad, I feel like he had a very bad year, but his time playing with Sweden during the World Championships, as well as the Four Nations face-off, that gives him a little bit more spark of what he's playing for. And I think he's going to come back in as well next year and play really good.
I love how positive you've been for some of these teams that went down the stretch last year and disappointed us across the board. I like it, Steele. The New York Rangers, though, probably fit the mold as the one that bounces back and makes the most sense. Mike Sullivan, all the pieces you mentioned so eloquently. I appreciate you. I'm just realizing that you don't have Jesper Bratt in the top 5. I don't even remember if you had him in your top 10 or not. And maybe that's just because of how high I am personally on this player. But
that's because I thought he was a right winger. Let's keep that in mind as well. He plays more on the right side.
Which is fair considering how butchered the top of my list was. But on NHL.com, he's listed on the left side, and he plays a little bit of both. He is a very actual versatile player. And for the sake of this list, I am just going to talk about this player very quickly, Steele. This man has 171 points over the past 2 seasons. He also brings some peripheral category coverage. He almost had 100 hits this year. The shot totals were well down. 60 shots less than the previous season, down to 180 this season. However, when you look at this player's progression, Couple of years ago, Steele, 73 points, followed up by 73 points, then 83, then 88. This is a very good player who's actually quite smart and an excellent skater, all the tools to be dangerous. And I really do think he is very underrated. You and I have spoken about Kyle Connor perhaps being like the most dangerous, underrated player out there. We're going to talk about him after the break before we get to bets as well. However, I love this player. So maybe I'm a little bit too high on him, considering at times he does go a little bit invisible, and perhaps that's indicative of this New Jersey team and their youth. I will say this, though, with that youth comes offensive upside. Nico Hischier, Dawson Mercer. We know Jack Hughes when he's in there is elite. Timo Meier can be a huge difference maker. There's a lot to like in the top six when it clicks. Has it had struggles? Yes, but for me, Jesper Bratt hasn't been one of those guys. 88 point steal near the top of the table this year in the NHL can't be ignored in the fantasy game, especially when I get 96 hits as well.
Look, he's been successful at times without Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier in the lineup. He's been the go-to guy for most of the season when they're dealing with injuries. So I didn't forget about him. I'm waiting for when we do the top 10 right wingers. He is a right winger in my opinion. I know he can play. He has the dual eligibility. He can play both sides, and he's listed just as a winger on Hockey Reference. No specific to left or right wing, but I'll talk about it when we get to right wingers after the break. Our top 3 left wingers for fantasy hockey next season. And of course, we'll wrap up the episode with big time bets.
Giddy up, my friends. Like we said off the top, get the pen and pad out because Steele and I will also be going NHL wide, baby. 32 teams, episode by episode, giving you the top 5 fantasy names on each squad and breaking down what their season had in store. So make sure you tap in to that for the rest of the summer. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, all of those late nights up for Steele on Avowed, that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop managing your money, you start building wealth. Take in the all-in-one convenience of Monarch Money today and take control of your finances. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. It really does mean so much to Flip and I. So showing all your support on YouTube, on your favorite podcast platform. Hit that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We love you out there. We appreciate you for holding us down through this point of the season.
It's true.
Top 3 left wingers in the fantasy hockey community, in the fantasy hockey realm, going into next year's fantasy hockey draft. I believe our top 3, if I had to guess, it's the exact same. Maybe the top spot is a little bit different, but no, at number 3, I have Kyle Connor. And you really have, again, like, not that I wasn't sold on this player, but you've really sold me on his capability to take that Winnipeg Jets team to the next level. And obviously a very unfortunate series of events in round 2 against the Dallas Stars. Couple of injuries, some bad play from Connor Hellebuck. Got some really good play from Kyle Connor offensively, playmaking ability. Career high, 97 points in 82 games, 41 goals, 56 assists, 267 shots. Again, the blocks, the hits, the penalty minutes, that's just bonus for anything that can contribute to your fantasy hockey team. But he's a juggernaut in the offensive zone. The way that he's able to see the ice is really spectacular to me, because he's not even looking at the net half the times. He's looking at a player looking for a cross-seam pass, and he somehow just picks a corner short side. He's got an unbelievable sense of accuracy, an unbelievable sense of time.
Well said.
In that slot area in front of the net, even outside closer to the boards or closer to the hash marks. He's got that it factor right now. And after the big signings, of course, to Hellebuck and Scheifele, you're kind of wondering what this team would be like this year. Would they be able to take that next level? And throughout the season, I saw nothing but tremendous play from both Scheifele and Kyle Connor, even in the first round, even in the second round. Obviously, again, unfortunate events to lose in that fashion, but Kyle Connor, top 3 left winger. I don't know if he's going to be a 97-point player again, but 85, 90 points, it's definitely up there.
Most definitely. Man, you're on point today. I really appreciate that because you said it so nicely with this player that you don't draft him for the peripherals. Whatever you get there is a bonus. When you look at the track record of this player, though, Steele, this guy, you can set your watch to him fantasy-wise. Run it all the way back to the 2017-18 season, Steele, and give me a minute here. 31 goals, then 34, 38, 26 in the COVID shortened season, then 47, 31, 34, and 41. This guy's 30 plus goals scored. You can lock that in. Everything else is a bonus. And I'll say this about this player because I've said underappreciated, undervalued, underrated, all of those adjectives. Take in the fact that if he's in any other market, pick one. New York, for example, Toronto, Montreal. This guy's a superstar. He doesn't get enough love because he's buried in Manitoba, and not everybody always pays attention to the city of Winnipeg. Not trying to hate, but you know what I'm getting at here. And sometimes that can translate into people sleeping on him in the fantasy game. I would say, though, that's probably over with after what we saw in the postseason and the regular season from him just this past 12 months. But I love this player. Thank you so much for being on point with me at 3. That I think the next one we're also on the same page for at number 2.
I'm not sure because I had to bounce back a little bit with number 2 and number 1. And as much as I really love this player, I think these 2 left wingers that we're about to discuss are top 10 picks in the fantasy hockey draft. These guys need to be picked in the first round. They need to be picked in the top 10. At number 2, though, I went with Brady Tkachuk.
Me too.
I went with Brady Tkachuk, and obviously for banger leagues, maybe he is number 1 on this list. But when you look at the overall fantasy aspect and categories, straight up fantasy points, head to head, whatever, Brady Tkachuk comes at number 2. And a big reason for that for me is I just don't know if he can be a consistent 70 to 80, maybe 85 point player again on a regular basis. He's, as much as I love the banger league beauty in him, the consistency of over 250 hits, the consistency of over 120 penalty minutes, he spends too much time in the penalty box. That is a contributing factor to his offensive capabilities. He also was getting a minute and a half less of average ice time from the year previous to this season, which consistently he only does get 18 and a half minutes. But regardless, he's such an offensive weapon around the ice. He plays such a heavy, hard game on both ends as well. Again, the physicality that he brings to this organization, the leadership that he brings at such a young age. He is a consistent, in my opinion, and will be consistent 30-plus goal scorer in this league. I just see Brady Tkachuk more as that utility guy who does it all for this club. And he's so consistent throughout the board, but he's not going to jump off the page with an 80, 90-point season. I would leave that to a guy like Tim Stützle. I would leave that to a guy potentially, maybe I'm not saying Jake Sanderson's going to put up 90 points, but Jake Sanderson could have a 60 to 70-point season with the way I've seen him play the last 2 years. So Brady Tkachuk for me comes in at number 2. I love the peripheral categories and this player. I always try to draft him in the first round if I can. He comes in at number 2.
And you can't help but feel that good things are really starting to happen in the nation's capital. I think that little bit of experience this year against the Toronto Maple Leafs team, which, let's be clear, as much as we've covered what's going on with the Toronto Maple Leafs, they were the better team. But that little bit of playoff experience, I think, could be huge for this young team.
Goes a long way.
And we've already spoken about what a player like Jake Sanderson can do for the confidence of a young team. And that guy is, speaking of getting the notepad out, make sure you triple circle Jake Sanderson for this year. When it comes to Brady Tkachuk, Steele, and this isn't a reason to deter from drafting him. This is just a little caveat that you put in your cap. When we've watched a lot of Brady Tkachuk hockey this year, 4 Nations, playoffs, head-to-head with the Leafs. We've watched this player a lot. So I can say with confidence that you should also remember when a player plays with the edge that he does and the physicality that he brings on every single shift, this at some point starts to catch up with you. And it has physically with him. We've seen it. It's taken a toll on his body. So you mentioned that little bit of the, his edge sometimes takes away from his ability to produce offensively because he's in the box. Sometimes that play will catch up with you physically as well. We've seen it with other players. Just wanted to throw that caveat out there because we take this seriously, Steele. Brady Tkachuk, an absolute stud. Let's talk about Kirill, the thrill, dollar bill, and bets right after the break.
That's coming up next. And like Flip said, throughout the course of the offseason, breaking down all 32 teams, top 5 players, player profiles, best bets for the season as well. We'll break it all down over the course of the next 2 months. Every episode, stay tuned in for that. After the break, big time bets and number 1 on the top 10 left winger list. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day, Monday through Saturday, with those Saturday specials. Your boy, Flip Livingstone and Steele Rodin, coming to you with these top 10 lists. And we're getting to number 1. You know who it is. It's my boy, near and dear to my heart, the Kirill, the thrill, Kaprizov. Number 1 on this list has to be, again, I went back and forth, but after what I've seen from him now the last 4 years, he is a superstar in this league. And I already said this before. In my humble opinion, Kirill Kaprizov needs to be a top 5 player taken this year in your fantasy hockey draft. I actually think, kind of go, again, McKinnon, McDavid, 1A, 1B, Leon Draisaitl, Nikita Kucherov, and then I would put Kirill Kaprizov above Austin Matthews at this point. He is a superstar in this league. Kirill Kaprizov over the last 4 years has been a 40-goal scorer with a 50-plus assist. He's a consistent 90-point player. He was on pace for 115 points this last year if he played a full 82 games. Obviously, injuries hindered him. He only played 50% of the season. He's never been a negative in the plus-minus column. He's a plus 71 throughout his career. Never had a negative season. Always consistently putting up over 250 shots. His shooting percentage is a career 16.4 in the league. He's got the goal-scoring ability. He's got the playmaking ability. Again, the hits, the blocks, the penalty minutes. That's just a bonus for a guy like this. I really do believe that if Joel Eriksson Ek and Kaprizov were healthy throughout the entire season, the Minnesota Wild are a top 3 team in the Central Division. And even when they did come back, and I don't want to blame the refs too hard, but I truly believe that the Wild were the better team in that first round series against the Vegas Golden Knights. They didn't get the calls going their way in games 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
4, 5, and 6, excuse me. And I thought they deserved to win that. And I believe moving forward, I actually think the Minnesota Wild would have given a harder test to the Edmonton Oilers in the second round series. This is not a pristine destination to go to, but it's changing. I believe in Bill Guerin. Kirill Kaprizov's a superstar. Matt Boldy is right there behind him.
There you go.
We talked about a bounce back year from Brock Faber after a pretty bad season this year. Philip Gustafsson was a top 5 goaltender in the National Hockey League as well. This team is changing.
Great point.
And again, while it's not a pristine destination, if Bill Guerin, the front office, the management can somehow entice players to give them really good contracts, entice them with Boldy, Kaprizov, it's a hockey town, it's a hockey city.
Yeah.
That all correlates to getting those guys in. So Kirill Kaprizov, he's number 1 on this list. He's a top 5 draft pick. I'm projecting him, if he's fully healthy, 100-point again. He's a 100-point player in my opinion.
I really appreciate you mentioning the connection to Matt Boldy, because when you're zeroing in on these elite players, you can't just focus on what they do with their production. You got to take it all in and have a look at power play units. Take a look at who they're going to potentially play with in the top 6. You got to know everything. That's what good fantasy GMs do, and you got to be prepared for the upcoming draft. Speaking of which, Steele, agree with you wholeheartedly with Kaprizov at number 1. I'm intrigued to see what Billy G does in the offseason. I think this is going to be a really spicy July 1st window. We know that the cap is going up. That is going to lead to a whole bunch of moves. I just have our Listener League draft results open from round 1 in the casual league because I remember taking Brady Tkachuk at 10 and Kirill Kaprizov went next at 11. So it's just very intriguing that you and I are talking about those two players as being higher, and they went 10th and 11th in our draft. And for food for thought, Connor McDavid 1, Austin Matthews 2, Mac Daddy 3, Kucherov 4. This one's a curveball. Pasta at 5, Leon Draisaitl 6, Rantanen 7, Makar 8, your boy and you at 9 with JT Miller. So very intriguing how only just a year ago, how different things will shuffle. But guess what? We'll continue to break it down for you guys right here, including nightly bets. Over to you, my friend. I got a same game parlay. I don't know how you're going to like it, but I think it's a bit spicy. So let's get to it.
Well, there's nothing else but the same game parlays right now. You only get one game a night in these Eastern and Western Conference finals. I got a same game parlay, number 1 on the list. Matthew Tkachuk, anytime goal.
Boom!
Plus 180.
Yes. Dude.
I think, again, he's been more of a playmaker. At times he has gone unnoticeable throughout this playoff so far, but he had a really good game in game 2 against Carolina, and I'm surprised. Yes, I'm actually shocked that the Panthers took both those games in Carolina. That was a brutal two games for the Hurricanes at home. Frederik Andersen just completely switched on a dime. This Carolina Hurricanes switches on a dime when they get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Regardless, Matthew Tkachuk, anytime goal, plus 180. Brad Marchand, 2+ shots at plus 175. And my third and final pick, Andrei Svechnikov, 3+ shots at plus 106 after only 17 shots on net in game 2. These Carolina Hurricanes know that they need to test Bobrovsky. They can't make it comfortable for him. Bobrovsky has been stealing the show on the road throughout the last 4 to 5 playoff games. They need to test him. They need to get to him early. You never know what bounce is going to take. We saw in that second round series between the Leafs and Panthers that pucks were getting hit off everybody in front of the blue paint. They need to do that right now for game 3 if they want any chance of coming back and winning this series. Svechnikov, 3+ shots, lock of the night.
Absolutely love that, Steele. I'm keeping things simple tonight. And I know you're probably going to say I'd stay away from the Panthers on the money line just because of the proper angle you just brought up, that Carolina is going to need to throw the kitchen sink at them or this series is going to be over. So I appreciate that, but I think the series is already over. This Florida Panthers team is far too good. I'm not even out here to knock on the Carolina Hurricanes because, they have kind of completely disappeared over the first 2 games. However, I think this is a little bit more indicative of how damn good this Florida Panthers team is. They're flexing their muscle, man. They toyed with the Toronto Maple Leafs last round, and now they are picking apart a very good Carolina team. Florida, money line, under 6.5. I'm going to take that up just for a little cushion because, I like to do that, Steele. I'm keeping things simple. Under 6.5 and hit me with the Matty Tkachuk. Anytime assist, like you so eloquently described once again, my friend. We're on point today. So hit me with the Matthew Tkachuk. Anytime assist. You said it. He's been more distributing, and I could see him doing just that again. Those 3 together are going to get you paid out at 4-1. That sounds like a treat for a little 25 what bet. We'll take our C note and we'll move on.
You know what? I stayed away from the money line, but if I had to pick, it would be the Panthers. 2-0 on the road. They go back home. Chance to go up.
They're locked in, man.
They're locked in right now, so I'd be comfortable throwing that into the parlay as well. Again, from what I've seen so far in the first 2 games, I'm not sure about the over, the under. So I'm gonna stay away from that one. But I wish you all the luck in the world for game 3. I hope it hits. I hope it hits for you and for everybody out there who is tuning into this episode and taking the under 6.5. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your second listen, though, please go check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. From your boys here, Flip Livingstone and Steele Rodin, we wish you good luck with those bets, your favorite teams in the postseason still, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.